Yankees Files podcast. We're back. I'm Will Harris. You're Joey. You're Conor McGuire. We've got a star-studded cast here on the World Series preview episode. The rest of you who are not Joey or Conor or me are fans of the American League champions, the pennant winners, the team with the highest expected weighted on base average this postseason, the team with the second best run differential in Major League Baseball, the team that employs Carlos Rodon. That team, of course, is the New York Yankees. We have a ton to get into on this episode. The Yankees have won the pennant since we last recorded, and there's an entire World Series to preview, and there's 15 years of baseball and history to look back on. But first, Joey, you first, then Conor. Thank you for being here. Shout out to Whipple, who is bedridden and ill. Whipple, we hope you feel better. We hope the Yankees make you feel better. But Joey, you first, then Conor. How are you doing? It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be back on the podcast scene. For those of you that don't remember, I have my own podcast, The Battle in New York. We've been on a hiatus, but the boys got hot at the same time, so we will be off until later. But I'm doing well, Will. I'm hyped to be here. Whipple, feel better. We miss you, Bobby.
Great to have you, Joey. Conor, welcome. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I don't do these things very often. I mostly just hide behind the keyboard and my phone. I have nothing to plug other than my account, which is purely for fun. So feel free to jump on there and find me. Handle's right there. I encourage you to not say anything nice to me. Just say mean stuff. If you haven't heard of me before, you haven't interacted, just make sure you're real mean, and I'll notice you.
Conor, I think one of the best things about us having you here is you are at least, if not the only, you're not the only podcast guest who's met A-Rod, but you are the one who met him most recently. So I feel like that adds just some credibility that we haven't had in a while. So thank you for that.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, it was funny, right? I mean, that was right when the three of us linked up down below after, right? It was like moments before. And I met him a couple of years ago in a more conventional setting with like, it was spring training. And he was kind of like just making the rounds there. And it was his comeback year. That was in 2015 when everyone absolutely hated him. And he wouldn't have been caught dead had he been retired walking around Yankee Stadium. But yeah, it was incidental. And I remember just kind of being shocked by his presence, being like, I know who that is. And then I had to give myself a little bit of credit. I was very cool about it. I was like, hey, Alex. And then he just, based on the fact that I wasn't excited at all, at least my tone, he shook my hand and then he was like, who the hell is this guy? Get that thing back.
Do you have any news you want to break about his height, or are you just going to keep that to yourself?
Yeah. So I don't know if he's gotten smaller over the years. I think when I first saw him, we were staying a little farther apart, but I was right next to him and I thought to myself, 6'3". I don't want to say anything bad. I'm not going to call him a liar, although I think he's done a pretty good job. It's pretty well documented, his lies. So I'll add one on the pile. He is not 6'3". I don't think he's even 6'1.5". But age is a factor. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the guy, I don't know. It's kind of funny. You know, you give a guy, you take away an inch, you give a guy an inch, whatever it is, you kind of ballpark it. It's fine. If I was an athlete, I'd go with 6'4". I'd be like, I'm 6'4.5", depending on which sport I played. And that would be a lie. But, oh, man, A-Rod, come on, dude. You got nothing to lie about. You got nothing, by the point that it even mattered, you're already getting drafted first overall. So yeah. I don't know why. Anyway.
Well, that is, look, the illusion is shattered. I think there's some people who are going to be very, very sad to hear that. Some people whose lives were built up around the idea that A-Rod's 6'3". So I'm sorry to those people.
Yeah, I hate to want to break that terrible, devastating news, but yeah.
Look, you're coming on here breaking hearts immediately. So guys, the Yankees just won the American League Championship Series. And the last time that happened, a lot of things were very different. We'll get to that later, but I want us to think back, if we can, to Game 3. The Yankees had a 2-0 series lead. They, of course, take the lead very dramatically against Clase with the back-to-back home runs. It's shaping up to be, the greatest Yankees playoff moment since, I don't know, that rally against the Astros in the 2017 ALCS, whatever it might have been. Pick your spot. But it had been a while. And they managed to blow the game. Joey, you first, then Conor. take me back to what you were thinking at that time, because I remember looking at the timeline and seeing a lot of people who were saying the series is over. Cleveland has all the momentum. There's no coming back from this, because there's something that I want to get to. But if we can kind of put ourselves back in the state of mind that we were in after game 3 ended, or even after the Noel home run, if you want to go to that moment, what were you thinking? What were you thinking about the chance they would win the series? What were you thinking about the dynamic, the balance of power? How were you thinking about the rest of the season?
Amazing question. So I was fortunate enough, I will say, to not be able to watch the game live. I was at another baseball game. I was at the National League Championship Series watching Shohei Ohtani and Mark Vientos go at it. Yamamoto on the bump. It was electric. But the boys tie it up. I'm jumping around. I'm kind of embarrassing myself around these Mets fans. We take the lead. I'm even more obnoxious. I'm not a care in the world. I'm following on the Reel app every single pitch. And they tie it up. And I just sunk. And it felt like garbage. But my confidence was not shaken. I said Yanks in 6. Thankfully, they wrapped it up in 5. But I wasn't totally demoralized. It was almost kind of nice that they had that moment, because it's like, all right, how are they going to respond? And I think they responded pretty well. I mean, here we are, smiles. So I think they did a decent job.
Conor, what say you?
Yeah, I think back to the 98 series against the former Cleveland team known as the Indians. And I looked at that as kind of what we didn't get in 22, where we got a gut check, and then we proved to ourselves, the team proved to itself, that no individual has to press to overcome obstacles or to kind of bounce back from things, that you can like look to the guy next to you and get confidence from that. And it's like this collective idea of like, we got what we need in the building. And now that they've seen it happen, it'll be even more of a kind of a powerful reflex and kind of strength of that team, I think. And it can always go the other way. You know, when you feel like there's always a cloud over your head, it's always raining on you, kind of how we tended to feel, certainly after 2019, getting beat down by the Astros twice, not even knowing there was some chicanery and cheating going on. But just the way you were mentioning earlier, Will, what's the biggest moment to happen? What's this the biggest moment since? And I was thinking of what would have been with the DJ home run. And then you can't even enjoy it. And so it's two things happen, I think. As fans, this is like, you know, the most euphoric, I think, collectively we've been since I've been on Twitter. And since I can remember, where you're kind of sharing it, you're kind of taking inventory of all the fans instead of just you and your family and your friends. Certainly been the most kind of united we've been. And there's a reason for that. It's because we've got faith in this team, and there's not a lot of divide around this team has talent, this team can win. That hasn't been the case for the last 5 years. We've been on kind of a nice run by any metric over the last 5 years of being relevant in the postseason. The second thing it does is those guys in the locker room, those guys in the clubhouse are just kind of thinking, why would we have any fear right now? And we're playing the Dodgers, and the Dodgers are a Goliath. And I don't want to skip ahead, but like, we got plenty ahead of us. But what's going to hold us back is going to be how we execute, not whether we're mentally prepared or playing scared. So, you know, that's what jumps out about it for me. And yeah, we're talking about a game that we lost, but it's how we answered, where it's kind of like just shrug that off and we win in 5 games. I mean,
and that's exactly what I wanted to get to, which is, I think the Yankees have a reputation for handling adversity poorly. And I think that is an unearned reputation. I think that going all the way back to the 2021 season, the Yankees were 41-41 through 82 games. They were basically the best team in baseball for the rest of the season. And then, look, Garrett Cole gets hurt. What happens in the playoffs. But there's this idea that the Yankees do something cool and they immediately let the other team do something cooler. It comes from the DJ home run. It comes from the Field of Dreams game. It comes from, 2021 even. And I just think it's wrong. I think if the Yankees were this team with no spine and no toughness, they would have lost the 2022 ALDS. I mean, every single thing going Cleveland's way for game after game, then the Yankees win 2 of their backs against the wall. If the Yankees were this team with no spine and no toughness, do you think they come out and put 2 runs on the board immediately in game 4 before they record an out? And then close the series out in 5 games. The Guardians had the game where they had 2 miracles and everything went their way except Clase's performance, and they bounced back and they punched the Yankees in the mouth, and they didn't do anything the rest of the series. They didn't win another game. And frankly, I'm tired of it. I think that this Yankees team has been insufficiently credited by many of its fans and many just observers of baseball from the start of the season. I was looking back earlier today at responses I got to a tweet in March about how much better the Astros are than the Yankees. Oh, hey, I looked at their rotation and their lineup, and they're so much better. Oh, you should want Hal to spend the way that they're spending. They're addressing their needs. They're not getting people off the scrap heap. And I'm just so tired of the way that people actually underestimated the Yankees for so long. And now you see that Fangraphs projects the Dodgers have a 52% chance to win the World Series, and people are showing up in my mention saying, oh, keep doubting us. And like, don't get me wrong, I love that energy, but this team all year has been better than it's gotten credit for. And I don't know, I think that there are these narratives and this reputation that had been built around them that was not earned. And I really thought that games 4 and 5 of the ALCS, I hope, put that to bed definitively, because I don't know what more resounding rebuke of that the Yankees could have provided.
I think you're touching on this like thread of like what's wrong with human nature in general. So I'm thinking like, okay, so at the end of the day, human beings will always try to like in reverse explain to themselves why it was so obvious.
Yep.
What actually happened. Meanwhile, it's very difficult to predict the future. And the only way you could be objective is from like looking back and pouring through data. But if that's all you do, too analytical. So it's kind of like everyone's got this like need to have this strong opinion and be right. But it's really easy to move on and never look back at your own receipts and to not learn from them. I think the idea that like, well, I'm never wrong is just this idiotic thought process that no one holds anyone else to that standard unless they're just being a troll. And by living in that delusion, we never learn. As we get older, we don't actually think, well, man, there's a little bit of wisdom that I've gotten from seeing all these things, because every time anything bad happens, I got to blame somebody. I got to find a reason where I could plausibly point back and say it's so-and-so's fault. We can hang them. Usually it's Cashman, Boone.
Yep.
It's sometimes the players, but it takes a lot for it to be the players. You got to really decline.
Yeah, unless the player is Aroldis Chapman, it's not the players.
Yeah, dude. Hand up. That's the only Yankee I ever booed in the building. Only Yankee I ever booed, and I did it once. But like, I mean, I'm a Yankee boy. I'm just like, yeah, man, team. Like, I'll go to the team store every time I'm there and just give them money. I don't even want anything today. Just $400.
Can confirm we've been there, and I've just seen him.
Yeah, it's like a tithe, right? It's like the passing around the basket. Here you go.
It's Odell Beckham Jr. on the field after the national championship game, just dapping people up with Ben Franklin's in his hand.
Oh my Lord!
Just get a tip from being in his orbit.
Exactly. So, Joey, obviously, playoff Giancarlo Stanton, incredible, and we'll get to him, and we'll get to playoff Juan Soto and him sending the Yankees to the World Series with that extra innings home run. You can't give the MVP to Stanton. You can't give the MVP to Soto. Who's someone whose performance really encouraged you, either thus far in the playoffs or from the ALCS on its own?
It's a great question. I'm going to go ahead and say Garrett Cole, and that's a very basic boy answer. But I'll tell you why. I feel like Garrett Cole has had this unfair stench around him since the 21 postseason. And look, he was hurt again. We can talk about this all day. But I'm saying Garrett Cole because can you guys name a pitcher in this postseason that you are more confident in taking the bump on any basis. If I hear Clay Holmes, I'm going home.
Tim Hill?
Him too. That's a good choice. But
probably no starting pitcher, though, to your point.
No starting pitcher that you can see that can walk in there and you're confident that he can take care of it.
I wouldn't agree with you, Joey, but then I saw that Instagram post from Class A where he was showing those rings, and I was like, I mean, I don't even care what happened in the field. That guy's impressive.
Very true. Very true. Those Little League rings were quite flattering.
Very humble and very cool of him to do that. I like that very much.
I want to know what the rings were for. Were they All-Star game? Were they like, they haven't, with all respect to the Cleveland Guardians, however much they deserve or don't, like, they haven't won anything. He didn't win a World Baseball Classic. What were the rings from?
I'm looking it up right now.
Are they making rings for winning the AL Central? Like, what is this the level we're operating at? That was the thing I was most confused by. Like, he goes through the trophies and you're like, okay, you know, reliever of the year, this, that, whatever. Where do you get the rings?
For things like winning an All-Star game or being an All-Star, like I
guess
you just wouldn't wear them.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't brag about them normally.
Unless you're Emmanuel Clase, allegedly the best pitcher of all time. That's what I heard.
Yeah. Look, I'll have to defer to you guys, and I'm sure, Will, you probably have something to say about this or could easily have it at your fingertips. How much luck went into him having the ERA he had this year? Because I know he's a great pitcher. I mean, in the aggregate, the guy's pretty dominant. I think it's a different game, especially for relief pitching when you get to this level. Ask Geraldus. But because growing up, and I'm pretty old, guys. I'm 34 years old, so I know gasps.
Oh my God, get out! You're too old to be here.
I have like year-to-year memories of how Rivera was like year to year. We kind of look back at him as this like big monolith of dominance, and he was. But in any given year, it's very rare to look back and say Mariano Rivera is the most dominant reliever in baseball right now. There wasn't a lot of time where that was ever really the case. And, you know, it's crazy. It blows kids' minds when you say that. They're like, well, what's the point of that argument? The point is the objective truth. It is nothing. Believe me, love Rivera. Why would I, but it's just true. And that's the kind of thing when it comes to the game switching and being about, just the mental game for relievers, I think is much more important relative to other positions and other players that get more opportunities. The mental game, I think, is important, but not nearly as much.
The Rivera thing is such a good point, and it's one that I've made. It's one that people don't understand. It makes them really mad. The singular thing about Mariano Rivera, aside from his playoff dominance, which is like a different thing, the singular thing about Mariano Rivera's career is that he was as good as he was for as long as he was, not that he was at every moment the best pitcher at getting opposing batters out. To your point, he rarely was. Billy Wagner for stretches was better. Eric Gagne for stretches was better. Brad Lidge for stretches was better. But Trevor Hoffman for stretches was better. But it was always for stretches. No one, if you expand the sample large enough, was as good for as long. And I don't know why people are so averse to that argument if they feel like you're calling him a compiler or something. Like, there is obviously a very special achievement to being that good for that long. But yeah, Emmanuel Clase is another one of these guys who for a period of time has been more effective at getting opposing batters out than Mariano Rivera was over the balance of his career. It certainly didn't help him when facing Kerry Carpenter or Aaron Judge or Giancarlo Stanton or any of the guys he faced the next night. But it's like, it's still true. And he's probably not going to be this great for 20 years. And to your point, like, it was probably lucky that only 1 in 25 fly balls he allowed during the regular season went over the fence. It was probably lucky that only 2 in 10 balls in play that he allowed during the regular season ended up as hits after it was 3 in 10 last year. But he is a tremendous pitcher, and I do think it was quite an achievement for the Yankees to get to him on back-to-back nights.
So I did a little homework, and my homework is TMZ. So very reputable.
Okay.
These look like all-star rings. They have to be all-star rings.
Yeah.
They can't be anything else. I don't think they're high school class rings. I don't think they're high school state championship rings. If they are, we can talk about that later. But I will say, in that video, I saw an AL reliever of the month. award.
Yeah,
Now,
you're right.
you want
You're right.
extra awards, great. AL reliever of the month. I think DJ LeMahieu has a few AL player of the month awards. Like, please. And
does he have a
that's not
reliever
just
of the month?
has Luke Weaver. I don't know.
No. I thought you said LeMahieu.
Does DJ LeMahieu have a reliever of the month?
That's what you're doing, DJ, right?
He probably has as many as Class A.
Hey,
I mean, we
as
don't.
long
We
as
can't
he is,
confirm that.
DJ
There's no
will
way to
never
confirm.
have it over Class A. Like DJ's never won a AL reliever of the month.
Of course.
You can't take it away from Class A, man.
No, you can't.
Let him have this, man. Let him have
He
it.
has more accolades in that regard. Yes. I digress. And another thing, just a crazy juxtaposition, and I know if you're listening, you probably know this, but Class A's regular season, he had an ERA of 0.61. Any guesses as to what his postseason ERA ended up being?
I know it, so I won't.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw a number out there. Is it 7.31?
9.
Oh my God. Wow. Well,
Not 0.9.
Yeah.
Not 0.9.
And 0.9 would have been 1.5 times his regular season ERA. Instead, it was 15 times his regular season ERA.
it just goes to show. I mean, a reliever ERA means nothing. It really, honestly, what it is basically just a home run rate. Like, it's over a shorter period of time, it's just like how many times you get on bombs, because you rarely get inherited runners, and it's pretty, no one's ever going to be that bad and continue to work, giving up a run every time they come in the game. It's not gonna happen.
It goes to show that reliever ERA is stupid and small samples are stupid. Like, is anyone giving up on
about it, though? Here we are talking about reliever ERA.
Is anyone giving up on Emmanuel Clase because he allowed whatever it was, 8 runs in 8 innings this postseason? I'm probably not. I'll go out there and say I bet he's going to be one of the better relievers in baseball next year. Wild.
The only thing I would say against that is that how mentally tough is he going to be, given what we learned with the ring video? But yeah,
that's a fair point. That's a fair point.
That's
Conor, your most encouraging player performance, either from the playoffs thus far or from the ALCS?
Yeah, for me, I'm surprised Joey didn't go this direction. It's got to be Gleyber Torres. I think, he's gotten his fair share of criticism from me and from other people. Love him. He clearly, I think the commentary over his career about his kind of got what Gary got, where it's like, sure, sometimes he doesn't hustle, but and you need that's coaching. You need to make sure that gets taken care of. But in terms of his like want and drive and how much he works on this game, I'm happy to see it really showing up like we've seen it show up before, but in these spots and from this leadoff position. Because when he goes, you have a leadoff guy that isn't just kind of parked there because of an OBP that we like and maybe plus speed or not, because he doesn't have plus speed. He's there because you have a threat on the first pitch of the game to have a runner in scoring position. You have a threat that puts the pitcher in a spot where he's starting to think before he throws the first pitch. And it's nice to have a guy that you can put up there, on the top, where if he gets on, you've got your big bats coming up in the first inning with guys on base, rather than what the Dodgers are doing. And it allows us to kind of be a little bit more forgiving to the guys in the bottom third. Look, he's gotten on base, he scored runs, he's got RBIs, all this stuff. He hasn't had a single home run in this postseason, but he's had this major impact that you can look at individually. But just the way the lineup, like the whole flavor of the lineup and the way you see innings develop and pitchers get under stress more often, it's a given that these guys are going to be threats. Even when Giancarlo's over 30, a pitcher's going to look at him a certain way. But Gleyber is really making that the whole pie of our lineup really kind of come together in a way that is not just a looming threat because of the names you're seeing, but just because we're punishing mistakes. We're getting pitchers out of the game earlier. I mean, you could debate, and I'm getting off track here, decisions made by Stephen Vogt throughout that series in terms of the early hooks. And I agree. I think that he was a little bit cute with that. But there's a reason that was happening. These pitchers were laboring because of all the stress that's being accumulated with the quality at bats, and having Gleyber really step up and show his full potential at the time we really, really needed it, not just from everybody, but from him and his tool set. Because he's always had the ability, in my view, I don't have any numbers or homework to back this up, but I'm pretty sure this is confirmed. From the eye test, at least, hitting good pitching requires an approach to the plate that isn't as finely tuned and wound as a guy like Judge or Stanton, where he's kind of up there, he's just kind of being fluid and being kind of a hitter. whatever that means. And I'm loving what I'm seeing. And I know he's at a major. How many runs did he score that series? Like 6? It's
like a million, like all of them.
All of the runs.
And, yeah,
yeah,
exactly. And to your point there, Connor, I think people always talk about lengthening the lineup with the guys hitting at the bottom. But when for so much of the season you had struggling Anthony Volpe, struggling Alex Verdugo, Ben Rice, whoever it was, Jahmai Jones once, hitting in that leadoff spot, putting a competent hitter who then has his best stretch of the season in the leadoff spot
and like
really lengthens the lineup. And like exactly
plays well.
No,
Volpe has been like a yo-yo between it. Don't leave Volpe where he is. Yeah,
absolutely. And so that's been terrific to see from Gleyber. The two guys I would highlight, Mark Leiter Jr. I mean, come on. Ian Hamilton goes down and Mark Leiter Jr. comes in and gets some of the biggest outs of this series. I mean, when he came in the bottom of the 7th after Ramirez and Naylor got to Holmes, and he's pitching with 2 on and 1 out and a 1-run lead. And you're like, all right, like it's basically out of desperation that you're going to Mark Leiter Jr. there. And it's Jhonkensy Noel, who hit the huge home run the night before. Of course, cameraman made it look like he did it again, but he gets that out. He gets Jimenez, and then he comes out and he does the job he needs to do in the next inning. Of course, there's the, error with the transfer to Rizzo and all of that. But I think the biggest out that Leiter got, and he came in and got some good ones the next night as well. In the 8th inning of Game 4, he allows the double to Bo Naylor to start the inning, gets the ground out to Rocchio, but now Bo Naylor's on third. You have a runner on third, less than 2 outs, and Steven Kwan is up. Steven Kwan, who is like the ultimate ball and play guy. He's the guy that people think Luis Ariz is, and he gets him to pop up. That was amazing. I think it's one of the most underrated plate appearances of the postseason, one of the most underrated outs recorded by a Yankee pitcher. I think it was 4th in championship win probability added of like any Yankees pitching play since 2017 in the postseason. Mark Leiter Jr., incredible. And then what can you say about Anthony Volpe? Obviously, there's been some good batted ball luck in there. There's not really been any slug, but the most exciting thing to me about what I'm seeing is he's swinging way harder and hitting the ball way harder, and he's walking a ton. He's walking more than 20% of the time, and he's walking more than he strikes out. Knowing that this version of Anthony Volpe exists, one who swings with anger and is incredibly patient and somehow has developed a sense overnight of which pitches he can drive and only swings at those, it's beautiful. It's amazing. And not only is that critical for the lineup this postseason, but if this is the version of Anthony Volpe that the Yankees can harness to some extent, like, I don't think he's a 150 WRC plus hitter, true talent, but like, holy cow, this could be really exciting. So got to shout out those two guys.
Amazing. If I can just hop in really quickly, I think we are in a near Great Depression era level of missing baseball names. And Big Christmas is the best frickin' name I've heard in a long time. Great name.
He's about to be surpassed. If you like Jhonkensy Noel, I bet you'll love Joe Stinction. I'm not totally clear on how it's pronounced. Garcia, Red Sox prospect. His name is spelled JHOSTYNXON. And they call him the password, which is phenomenal.
That's elite.
That's really good.
No, we're coming back. We Big Christmas is a great name. Jhonkensy Noel, that's a cool name too. And he's a big dude. Like, it's perfect.
Phenomenal. It fits. It's great.
I'm so glad that he'll be like a trivia answer instead of like a legend, Yeah. I mean, I said this to apropos of nothing to my girlfriend who barely cares about baseball. I was like, it's going well when you start feeling bad for the other team.
Yeah.
Because normally it's baseball's like my venue to be totally irrational and crazy. I try to avoid that in public, but like in my internal life, I'm a nut job. When it comes to me watching the game, sitting there, I can't stream. I'm insane, and I wouldn't be able to sit still. And I'm sitting there watching the Yankees like win these close games, and I think we're up 2-0 at this point. Or sorry, no, this is the Royals series. I'm completely flipping this, and I was like, I kind of feel bad for these guys. No, wait, it was the Guardians. Kind of feel bad for these guys. Just left game 2, got to really enjoy that, and I was like, I didn't want them to win one, but it was like these guys fight all year, 162, and for them, it's like unless they leave the team. The Guardians kind of are what they are. They're not going out and making a big splash. They got to figure out what they have from within. And when they feel like they're not measuring up against a team with more resources, you're just like, all right, well, play harder, develop new skills, have Jose Ramirez get better than he already is. I mean, it's not just a matter of, hard luck, get him next year. I think it'd be hard to not be despondent in a smaller mid-market team when you're in Yankee Stadium getting worked. And at the end of the day, it's almost, I think it's because I've lost muscle memory of what it felt like to be the evil umpire, where it used to be like, no, we were getting enough hate from the outside, where it's like, sorry, you're pathetic, sucks to suck. And I felt myself getting a little bit like, oh, poor them, like genuinely. And then we dropped one, and I was like, that's gone. That's eradicated. F Cleveland. F the whole nuclearized Cleveland. Get rid of it. That's how I felt after we lost one game. So it comes back quick.
So we've made a number
to build on that sentiment, though. If I can just cut in really quickly, it feels really good to be back. Like, if you're checking Twitter, you're seeing everybody crying. I've seen more Guardians fans cry after the series than in the series. It's amazing to be back. But I will say, Conor, there was something you said that I don't agree with, and that is the no resources in Cleveland. That is the lamest argument I've ever heard, because the Dolans, who own the Guardians, I have to look down to look. They are worth $4.6 billion. Now, I understand how business works. You can explain revenue, payroll, all that nonsense. If you are worth $4.6 billion, they're worth more than the Steinbrenners. You're telling me they don't want to spend more than the Steinbrenners? I hate it.
This is the Joe Sheehan tweet is always what comes to my mind, which is if you can afford the team, you can afford the players. Sorry, Cleveland. So it's been 15 years since the Yankees played in a World Series, and it's time for us to take a look back at what it was like to live in the world in 2009. Joey and I were in middle school. Conor wasn't. I
was into teaching them, and yep, they were in my 7th grade class. And
exactly. Conor was our English teacher, and so I'll dive in with I think the #1 song in the country right now is that Shaboozey song. This time in 2009, it was Down by Jay Sean, which is a phenomenal song. And What You Say, Party in the USA, Run This Town were 2, 3, and 4. Down had just taken over the top spot on Billboard from 3 by Britney Spears, which was number 5. Empire State of Mind was number 12. How cool was that? The president was Barack Obama. Conor, what do you think gas cost on average in the United States in October of 2009?
I'm going to overthink this. Just give me a second. I'll try to give you a straightforward answer. I'm going to go with $1.90.
Yeah, so it was $2.61. The latest iPhone was the 3GS, which contains such updates over the prior model as video recording and an internal compass. So that was cool. You could finally tell cardinal directions on your iPhone. Joey, do you remember who the reigning NCAA men's basketball national champion was?
Is that the North Carolina Tar Heels?
It was the North Carolina Tar Heels, led by Tyler Hansbrough and Ty Lawson. Conor, do you remember who won NBA MVP that year?
2009 it wasn't Kobe. Was it Kevin Garnett?
It was LeBron James for the Cavs. Kobe did win the NBA Finals, though, against the Orlando Magic. Joey, do you remember who the number 1 overall pick in that year's NBA draft was?
Ooh, 2009. That was a Blake Griffin, if I'm
That was
not
Blake
mistaken.
Griffin. That's right. The Steelers were the reigning Super Bowl champions. Connor, do you remember who the offensive rookie of the year was in that NFL season?
2009. Offensive rookie of the year.
Catholic.
He's Catholic?
And his alma mater, too.
Oh, my goodness. Offensive rookie of the year. Was it quarterback?
Yep.
Okay.
Frigid. A frigid Catholic.
Frigid? Oh, my God. This is killing me. Can you give me one more hint so I don't look embarrassed? Or I don't embarrass
He
myself.
may have enjoyed some natural light.
Oh, my God. What conference? Before he went.
NFC South.
Okay. This is embarrassing. All right. I got nothing.
That would be Matty Ice, Matt Ryan from Boston College.
I forgot he existed. Forgive me.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Matthew Stafford was the most recent number 1 overall pick in the NFL. Joey, who do you think led the AL and NL in Fangraphs position player war in the 2009 Major League Baseball season?
Ooh, I'm going to get this wrong 150%.
You could get NL right. You're going to get AL wrong.
Was it Chase Utley?
It's not Chase Utley, though. That's a very good guess.
All right. And in the AL, who was good in 2009? Josh Hamilton?
So it was Ben Zobrist in the AL and Albert Pujols in the NL.
Ooh, okay.
Connor, can you get the pitching war leaders in the AL and NL, who also won the Cy Youngs that year?
AL pitching war. Was Johan Santana on? Was he in the AL at that point?
No.
No, NL.
I don't think he was.
Okay,
He did not.
I'm gonna go with Cliff Lee.
Not Cliff Lee.
We're talking about NL, right? Okay. Do I have to give you AL then NL? I'm just throwing out
Yeah,
names.
sure. Yeah. I mean, if you get either of the guys, I'll let you know.
CC didn't win Cy Young that year. I know that. My mind always goes to CC. It's my guy right there.
The war leaders did win Cy Young, both of them.
Okay. AL. Okay.
One will be a Hall of Famer. The other had a really good This Is Sports Center commercial.
Okay, I'm feeling Felix Hernandez, King Felix for AL. No.
No.
All right, tell me AL. Let's not.
Zach Greinke in the
Zach
AL.
Greinke. Oh my gosh. Okay. Excellent. Probably wouldn't have gotten that. NL. He's the one with the Sports Center commercial. Okay, give me a line from the commercial, or unless you think that would totally give it away.
Hey, what's up? This is the Freaky Franchise.
All right, can I know the answer. Can I do it?
Please,
I'd like to solve the puzzle.
Go. Take it away.
The Freak, Tim Lincecum.
It was Tim Lincecum.
Oh my God.
Connor, you'll get this though. Who was the highest paid player in the AL?
It was A-Rod.
It was A-Rod at $33 million. Manny was the NL's highest paid player at $23 million. Rich Hill was in his 5th major league season at that time. He had 78 appearances to his name. He would go on to make 306 more. Your MVPs were Joe Mauer and Albert Pujols. Your rookies of the year. Can either of you name either rookie of the year from 2009? They're both not good ones.
Andrew Bailey.
Yep.
Wow. With the A's, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's American League. So National League Rookie of the Year. Can you just give me the division?
I think of this guy as a Marlin and a Cub.
Oh, I
My
know.
mind went to Juan Pierre, who was way before that.
It's Jason Hayward.
Is it
Not Jason
player?
Hayward.
Position player?
Position player, yeah.
Marlin Cub. Marlin.
He won it as a Marlin and then went to the Cubs.
Oh my gosh.
Jason Hayward was never.
Dove over a catcher to score.
Over a catcher to score. What? Come again?
Whoop. Whoop.
Dude, your hints are more confusing than the questions, but I appreciate the effort.
Whoop.
Go ahead. Hit me with
Did that. It was Chris
Conor.
Conor.
Oh, okay. I'm out of my depth here. Yeah.
No, it's a ridiculous one. The youngest players in the league were Madison Bumgarner and Rick Porcello in the NL and AL respectively at 19 and 20 years old. Charlie Manuel, the manager of the Phillies, was 65. He's now 140. So there's that.
But Jack McKeon.
Is Jack McKeon alive?
No.
I don't think
I didn't think so.
He's smoking cigars in heaven. Good for him.
And you know what? Good for him. Jack McKeon is alive.
No.
Jack McKeon is 93 years old. He is alive. This is against
we know
all
how big of an audience this has, so he's for sure going to see this. I'm sorry, Jack.
we know you're listening and we appreciate it.
They're actually around the living room television. He's kind of sitting there, and they're like, he's just shaking his head. Really, for the entire McKeon clan, I apologize.
Yeah,
friend of the show,
Jack McKeon. Friend of the show, exactly. All right, guys. So now we can get into what people really came for, which is the World Series. The Yankees have announced it'll be Cole, Rodon, and Schmidt in games 1 through 3. Presumably that leaves Luis Gil for game 4. I think we can infer Flaherty, Yamamoto, and then some combination of Walker Buehler and a bullpen game in games 3 and 4 for the Dodgers. Dodgers could make some interesting bullpen additions with Alex Vesia and Brusdar Graterol potentially, and we know that the bullpen game is a very big part of their postseason strategy. Joey, you first. Where do you stand on the pitching matchup here? Do you give an advantage in either direction? Do you feel like starting pitching depth, bullpen depth, matchup strength is going to matter more? Where are you coming down on this?
Look, the Yankees clearly have the starting pitching advantage. We're not the ones, running out bullpen games in the postseason. Now, granted, it's worked for them, but this isn't the Mets. This isn't the Padres. We're not playing around. I think we have a lot more depth, and I think that's one of the bigger advantages that we have. I mean, listen, they have great hitters, but I'm going to give the advantage pitching overall to the Yankees. Yamamoto is great. I got to see him in person. Walker Buehler has been suspect. And Jack Flaherty had the sniffles, and the Mets beat him up, and Dave Roberts cried about it. So I'm not threatened by Flaherty. I think we hammer him. But, yeah, I'm going to give my pitching advantage to the Yankees.
Conor, what say you?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I wish I could disagree with Joey. I really enjoy seeing his face when I do that. But I think when you're kind of checking the boxes, they're both great teams, and I think you have to. If we don't have the advantage for starting pitching, then or at least we don't feel like we do, even as fans. Why are we showing up right now? I think that's how we're going to win, right? That's the path to victory. So right now, I got to believe it, and I think you can make a compelling, objective argument as to why.
Yeah, I think I'm with you guys. Neither the Dodgers nor the Yankees have been incredible from a run prevention perspective this postseason, but the Yankees have been more than a run better. And I think that's in no small part due to just the reliability of even getting 4 or 5 innings from the starters that the Yankees have been able to lean on. So I'm with you there. And I think this transitions interestingly into the bullpen question, because suppose we grant that the Dodgers have the bullpen advantage. Obviously Luke Weaver is terrific. We've seen flashes from Clay Holmes. Tim Hill has been phenomenal. Mark Leiter had a few, very big outings. Nestor Cortez could be back, which would be really exciting. Even with all that, Jake Cousins did some good work, some bad work. It was kind of the typical JCE. That's the Jake Cousins experience. Even if we grant that the Dodgers have the better bullpen, which I'm happy for either of you to disagree with, my question is, would it matter? because going into this series, we know which team is planning on relying on more innings from their bullpen, and it's LA by probably a pretty significant margin. So how do you, Connor, I'll go to you first. How do you think about that balance between quality and use, and how does that affect the way that you think about the matchup?
Yeah, I think you talk to Dodger fans, and I think what they're concerned about is just what you just said, or how it ties into that. The tread on their tires is much more significant at this point. They've really had a lot of miles on their arms because they've leaned on them so much, like you said. And I think you could make an argument. You're not going to say pedigree or stats wise, the Yankees are better. Certainly, a lot of what we owe our success to has been late runs or kind of discovery of another level for some of these guys, which you would have asked me back in April, I would have told you the key to winning a championship is having guys overachieve. The Johnny Gomeses of the world, going out there and batting 380 for like half a season. We're getting that with Luke Weaver right now. I'd love for him to sustain that. But for right now, you can kind of bank it. It's baked into the pie. Just as great as Blake Trinan is, all these other guys, I think that it comes down to execution. It comes down for us what Clay Holmes is going to show up, because like he's a polarizing guy. He's polarizing because his talent is elite when he can put it together. We talked a lot of mental game earlier and relief pitchers. It's a huge question mark, and for me, the biggest hinging point where we can debate like the totality of our pens, but the biggest point of what's going to happen is what Holmes we get. Right? We got to roll him out there. I'm okay with kind of sticking with him. I think we know Boone will. As like kind of the quasi setup guy or kind of that fireman to come in the high leverage spots even earlier in games. And if he can do that consistently and effectively and not get, ideally come in with a clean inning, no one on base, give him a chance at that, I could see it being us looking back and saying, why was everyone so sure LA had the advantage? Now, if I'm a betting man, I'd say, they got, like I said before, they got a lot of pedigree. They got a lot of talent out there for sure.
It's interesting with LA's bullpen because the stats don't grade out super well. Not only have they had to get 57 of the 97 innings they've pitched this postseason from their bullpen, but they've gotten those at a 3.16 ERA. Compare that to a 2.56 from the Yankees in 38 2/3. Obviously, the Dodgers have been facing much better hitters. Some of that final ERA number for the Dodgers is just a weird mix of stuff where like Landon Knack had that one outing where they were like, all right, go out and wear it. His postseason ERA is 15. They have 4 guys. Vesio, we're not sure if he's going to be there, but they have 4 guys who have combined to throw like 15 scoreless innings. So it is a little bit like, going into game 3, you had Holmes and Weaver who had effectively been untouchable. And then you had like the other guys. But Conor, I think you're right to say that relievers are fickle, and we don't know which Michael Kopech is going to show up. What if first half Michael Kopech shows up? What if, late August Clay Holmes shows up? Like, these are things that could absolutely swing games. But I gotta feel like even if they are able to throw in Vesia and add in Gratterall, the fact that not only have the Dodgers had to play more games than the Yankees, but the fact that their bullpen has already thrown 20 more innings and they haven't been super, it's not like, oh, well, it's, it's Pedro Avila, like the Guardians did, who threw all the innings. And we don't really rely on him when the games get important. Like, every guy has pitched a ton. Yeah, whereas the Yankees have fewer guys, but they need them to hold up. Joey, I know bullpens are, near and dear to your heart. So what are you thinking?
I'll tell you this. Before I give my thoughts, I'm going to prompt a question to both of you. Who would you say during the regular season, and listen, everything's up for grabs now, would you say Cleveland had a better bullpen than the Dodgers?
Yeah.
And listen, Clase had a meltdown. But how did our mighty Yankees do against the Four Horsemen?
I think pretty well.
They took care of business.
Got to Cade Smith, got to Hunter Gaddis.
We stole their milk money, man. We worked them. They're not going to have the same reputation, which is not fair because they had such a great season, but they are no longer going to be the Legion of Boom out there. anymore because of this is what matters, and we walked the dog on them for sure.
And how did now? Granted, the Mets and Padres kind of, truthfully, they both had opportunities to take it to them, and they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
When the Yankees, and we mentioned this earlier, had their backs to the wall, what did they do? When all looked lost, when we talk about momentum being a myth, when all seemed lost and it was all over, what did the boys do?
Made it happen.
Boys banged it.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm giving the bullpen as a homer to the Yankees. Listen, the Dodgers bullpen, are they going to show up? They're going to show up. Is it going to be stressful? It's going to be stressful. But I'm not nearly as worried about the Dodgers bullpen as I was Cleveland's bullpen.
I think that's fair. I think that's totally fair. The Dodgers are less an example of the take a lead into the fifth and feel very confident about it style of winning baseball games than Cleveland is. But, and we can transition to hitting, the flip side is their offense is phenomenal. Whether Freddie Freeman is healthy or not, whether he is a factor or not, the lineup is terrifying. And, you know, home runs are very much my thing. And I would just point out that this postseason, there are 3 teams who made the League Division Series round and have scored at least 50% of their runs via the home run. The Padres scored 57%. They got knocked out by the Dodgers, who have scored 50%. The Dodgers in the World Series are facing the Yankees, who have scored 51% of their runs via the home run. The Dodgers in the regular season were not as good as you might expect at limiting home runs as a pitching staff. And obviously the important thing is home run differential more so than just how many home runs you allow. The Dodgers could afford to allow 1.25 home runs per game because they were hitting 1 million of them. But given that we know home run reliance is good for your offense in the playoffs, and given that the Yankees have had a very good offense in the playoffs that has been home run reliant, it's maybe not the worst thing in the world to be facing this Dodgers pitching staff. Now, the Yankees were kind of middling in their home run suppression, so maybe the Dodgers are saying the same thing. The offenses are similar. I think if this were Dodgers Files, I'd be saying, man, it's going to be really tough to navigate that Yankees lineup. So, Joey, where do you come down on this? Is your thought that because the Yankees have the pitching advantage, they just need to play the Dodgers to a draw on offense? Do we need to think, all right, we have to go out and score 8-9 runs to win this game? How are you approaching that side of things?
So I've been pretty critical of the Dodgers, and I'm going to give them credit where it's due. This offense has been unbelievable, and they do this thing that championship teams do, where you have guys show up like a Tommy Edman that ball out. And I'm looking at the lineup, and I don't think there's a single Dodger that I can look at and be like, that's an easy out. Even Freddie Freeman on 1 foot, that's not an easy out. These guys are scary, but it's really going to come down to a chess match. And I think, listen, Boone's done a great job, and I'm sure we'll get to that later. But, like, this Dodger offense is scary. Like, if anyone's thinking it's not going to – if anyone's thinking it's going to be easy, they're – number one, what have you been watching? Number two, please stop talking to me. No, this is a scary offense. And guys, like I said, like Tommy Edmonds, your Will Smiths, that are going to show up and have these big moments are what make them truthfully terrifying. It's not even necessarily your bets, Ohtani's, Freeman's. It's like I said, again, Tommy Edman, ALCS MVP Tommy Edman. That's going to be a fun 15-year question. Anyway, that's really where I'm saying. That offense is scary, but we just got to be smart about our pitching matchups.
Yeah, I mean, the scariest thing to me is like, all right, you get to the playoffs and you have a 113 WRC plus from Andy Pages. Like, they're just going to have everything go well for everyone. Like, is that what? And I get that, like, Chris Taylor and Will Smith and Gavin Lux haven't been great, but like they don't have an Austin Wells level postseason from anyone right now. They don't have a Jazz Chisholm level postseason from anyone right now. And the lineup depth does concern me. Like Joey, to your point, there's not an easy out. And maybe you can avoid walking Max Muncy 25% of the time, like he's done so far. Like, and hopefully he gets himself out some amount of the time. And the Yankees, based on like the expected stats, which are walks plus strikeouts plus quality of contact, have actually been better than the Dodgers marginally this postseason. So maybe there's some overachieving going on from the Dodgers and some underachieving from the Yankees. And then there's obviously how these things cluster that results in how many runs you score. But yeah, they make me nervous. Conor, any hitters you're particularly nervous about outside of that big three?
Yeah, I think you look at Edman and Muncy and you say, boy, if they can keep what they have going from an on base, but also like a slugging, perspective, you're going to lose that feeling we got during the ALCS where when Ramirez would get out, we would just kind of all take a nice little breath.
Yeah.
Even if you got 3 Ramirez's in there, or guys that are arguably better than Ramirez, and you got 3 of them at the top, you don't take that breath when you get through 3 of them, and that becomes more and more exhausting for the pitchers involved. It becomes more mentally draining to kind of be thinking about that, and also strategically, it gives you fewer open doors to walk through as a coaching staff that has done really, really well so far, both Matt Blake and Aaron Boone, in terms of managing the tools we have out there. You got to give them credit for that, I think. Maybe I'm doing a little bit of that reverse engineering and saying, well, the results speak for themselves. Must have been good coaching, but you can point to situations where you thought interesting choice, and then, wow, that really worked out. And then time and time again, you see it enough times, say, great. That becomes a little bit harder when you're dealing with a lineup that doesn't have as many holes in it. But I would push back on one point, or at least try to flip it around and play devil's advocate to what you said, Will, earlier, which I think is a good point. And you're coming from a place of data when you're talking about the guys that have not necessarily performed well for the Yankees versus really the Dodgers firing on all cylinders. Couldn't you, in a different life, take that same set of data and flip around the argument and say it could be bullish for the Yankees and bearish for the Dodgers going into a brand new, fresh series? Because if they're maxing themselves out, if they're really like fulfilling their offensive potential, and we know we're not, we know that Jazz and Austin Wells aren't bums.
Yeah.
No guarantee that they're going to step up. Regression to the mean doesn't just happen because you wanted to. But, I could see that being not a positive, but not necessarily a given going into this series. So while I agree with you, I am very concerned about the difference in feel that we're going to get from our pitchers, like facing this lineup over and over and over again. It's, when you're fighting a heavyweight, the punches land harder, and you got to make sure that you're playing good defense, right? Versus a featherweight or a welterweight where you can kind of take a few of those and say, okay, yeah, we'll get you back. We'll dance around a little bit. You can't dance around these guys. You keep dancing around, all of a sudden you got bases loaded and Tommy Evans coming up. So good for you. You're down towards the middle bottom of the order, but it's no bueno, because these guys can hit strikes and punish you too. As talented, as amazing these other guys are, Mookie Betts is like my favorite non-Yankee player of all time. It doesn't matter. These guys are all pros. They're here for a reason. You just got to not have other guys getting up there with bases loaded, no outs, really. And if you do, limit the damage.
No, you're exactly right. And I think you could very easily say, well, Max Muncy's not going to play like Juan Soto forever. And Tommy Edman's a below average offensive player for his career. And Austin Wells and Jazz aren't bums. And if Aaron Judge decides to have a series in which he demonstrates that he's Aaron Judge, suddenly the balance of everything changes. Absolutely. I would 100% agree with that. And, to the point about momentum, like Max Muncy playing as well as he's played this postseason does not necessarily predict that he's going to continue that in the postseason. If anything, we would get increasingly less convinced that he's going to continue playing like that, to the extent that we'd update our opinions about his true talent. But they're two phenomenal offenses. They're two phenomenal offenses that aren't necessarily getting the composition of the production that they thought they would. Like, the Dodgers probably didn't expect that Tommy Edman would be a more forceful, important postseason performer than Teoscar Hernandez has been. Or that, I mean, you want to talk about Hernandez's, like Enrique Hernandez being one of the greatest postseason hitters of a generation. That doesn't make sense. It shouldn't keep happening. Will it? Maybe. But I totally hear you. And you could make a very compelling, positive argument for the Yankees offense. And we're talking about minimum 40 plate appearances in the wild card era. The three best postseason hitters on the Yankees: Juan Soto, Giancarlo Stanton, Juan Soto, Anthony Rizzo, Giancarlo Stanton, 202, 187, and 170 WRC plus. Then you have number 7, Gleyber Torres, also on this team. Like, this is a team with a lot of playoff pedigree if you go back 30 years, as we know. And we're seeing some of the best offensive playoff performances from guys who are currently on this roster. So to the extent that you believe in postseason risers, or that, you know, playing in the postseason is fundamentally different and you can be a different guy, if we're going to buy into that for Enrique Hernandez, we should buy into that for those guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think you can throw it out in terms of any regression predictions. So you got to look at talent, and you got to look at guys that are not taking it for granted. A lot of times, I think the 2017 team was just on a ride, and I think very few of those guys are still there. And Gleyber wasn't even there until 2018. But I think this kind of continuum of like having a lot of talent and getting close but not quite breaking through, I think it's instilled in these guys a real sense of urgency here. I think that there's never going to be any kind of wavering focus or doubt or people worried about how they're looking on TV. I think they're looking at the next guy, to their left, to their right, and saying, they got my back, I got theirs, because our mission is bigger than us, bigger than me, my career, my free agent year. And I love that. I love the glue that gives us, and you can see it. Everyone says these things. I mean, in a big market, these guys are trained. They know how. I feel it, though. I like genuinely feel it on a level where if you're looking for the intangibles beyond the data, looking back and you're looking ahead, you're trying to see what's the X factor from a kind of between the lines perspective. I don't know. I can't point to any one thing. It just seems like it makes sense that these guys who have fought and failed and fought and failed, and a lot of them have done it together, look around and see a new mix of talent that we hadn't really quite had before, with better, I would say, diversification among skill sets, better attitudes overall, and a real, I think, laser focus from guys like Giancarlo and Judge that know that they're not necessarily close to being over the hill, but the urgency around having an elite group and then they themselves being elite enough to carry, it's kind of now or never, man. And there are very few more motivating things in sports than looking around and saying, I can either be one of those guys that like, oh, what a great run he had, versus like a Yankee legend where you're getting invited back and fans 15 years later are standing up and just giving you that. And that's on the table for those guys. And obviously we want it for them, but if they don't get it, it won't be for lack of focus. It won't be for lack of buy-in from everybody there. So I'm pumped about that. But I forget your question. I really do.
That's fine.
I talk myself into oblivion. It's what I do best.
It was beautiful.
No, thanks, man.
Joey, I'm sure you have a comment there.
You know what? I kind of do. And it's more towards the end part of that. We can look at this team historically as the 77 team, which kind of turned things around. And it's legendary, and it's iconic, and it's sick. And if you know your baseball history, that 77 team, pretty freaking nuts. I know we can't really curse on here, so pretty freaking nuts.
Here's hoping that Giancarlo Stanton furthers the Reggie Jackson comparisons in this series.
That would be very nice. Or we can look at them like the 81 team.
It's funny. Did you see my tweet about that? It was completely apropos of nothing.
I don't think I did.
Drawing it was almost like the Charlie Kelly meme where he's like drawing the line between. Let me get that pulled up really quick because it's so convoluted. But Joey, while I do that, you please continue your point.
We can look at it, like I said, as the 77 team, which important team in Yankee lore, or we can look at it as the 81 team or the 2003 team, where I don't want to say 2001 because that was a little different, where it's like, yeah, they made it, but you don't want this to be a but kind of year.
No.
And to Conor's credit, no, he's right. The vibes are off the charts right now. The big guys are showing up. We need the little guys to show up, and we need 99 to show up. And we'll get more into that later. But the vibes are there. The brotherhood is there, and every single sports cliche you can think of is there.
So, Joey, building on something you started to get at there, if I asked you to make a call today, and I said you can't change the answer based on the result of the World Series, 2024 is a success or a failure?
That's a great question. And I've had this talk a few times with coworkers, friends, family, etc. And it's like, there's one side of me that's like, this is great. They made it back. And as I mentioned, you don't want it to be a butt year. But at the same time, anything short of a World Series is a disappointment.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna stick with my heart and say anything short of a World Series is a disappointment. You know, to come that far and lose, because I've been talking to friends about it and I've been very, very, very anxious. They're like, oh, just be happy to make it, just this, just that. I can't operate that way. We get here, we got to take care of business. And if we take down this Dodger team, a lot of narratives are rewritten. A lot of pain from the past is eased just a little bit. So, yeah, they got to win.
Yeah.
They
You guys
got to
ever
win.
had to take a test before where it's not like you get a, it's like an A or a B, or it's like a pass-fail test where and there's a long cycle before you can take it. You ever have like a test like that?
Sure.
It's like that. If you don't get a B plus in the World Series, you don't get a C plus. It's an A or an F, and it's not. You can look at it however you want to look at it, and there's going to be a lot of fun times between now and the end of this thing. Even if we lose, I'll have memories with people that I care about. It'll be fun. It'll be great. I'll look back on that with fondness, and it's be very personal. But we're talking about the New York Yankees, their fan base, their objectives, and a lot of very highly paid people that are in charge of preserving their culture of winning. Because for better or for worse, our team lacks any discernible character outside of winning championships. That is our culture. That is what defines this team. So, I mean, that's kind of the bed you made, and you got to win. The year was a nice year, but it's not going to be something that really means anything to anyone beyond a 3-4 year period. And if anything, if we don't win in this window, and we look back on this year as being our best and closest chance, it'll be the same thing as 2017. It'll be like a warm and fuzzy. Oh, look who was on that roster we forgot about. That's it.
I'm tired of feeling that way.
Yeah.
I'm really, really, really tired of feeling that way.
Yeah. I'm Mr. Sunshine Rainbows and not doom and gloom and not trying to be black and white, and let's live in the nuance and tell ourselves an honest story about like what really happened. We were there. We don't have to be black and white. But when it comes to this kind of thing, when it comes to, championships, you can say I'm spoiled or whatever, but it's not spoiled. I'm hungry. I'm famished. And I think as a fan base, the ones that aren't are the ones that don't even get it yet.
So I have a couple thoughts.
Okay.
First, the odds that the Yankees win this series are probably about 50%. These are two very evenly matched teams. Maybe you can say it leans one way, it leans the other, but it's basically a coin flip. And of course, they're going to go out there and play the games, but it's basically a coin flip. I would not base my assessment of this season as a success or a failure on the result of a coin flip. If they just said, okay, Judge and Ohtani, go out to the mound at Dodger Stadium and flip a coin, and whoever calls it correctly wins the World Series, I wouldn't base my assessment of whether the season is a success or a failure on that. Second, one of the major problems I have with anything but a championship is a failure, or two of the major problems I have. First, you want me to believe that 1990 and 2003 or 2001 were the same season for the Yankees? Because we're calling them both failures. I find it, if it's you pass or you fail, it's black and white. I just can't buy that. I can't buy that winning a pennant, going to game 6 or game 7 of the World Series or whatever it is the same as losing 100 games. I can't do it. And people have encouraged me that I should believe that, and I can't get on board. The the other part of it is when George Steinbrenner bought the Yankees, there were fewer baseball teams. And in order to make it to the World Series, you just had to win one 5-game playoff series. Now, for most teams that make the playoffs, you have to win a 3-game series, a 5-game series, and a 7-game series just to be in the World Series. So it doesn't feel fair given how much the test has changed. The league is more competitive. There are more teams. There's more you have to do in the postseason just to be in the World Series. It doesn't feel fair to apply the same standard of success or failure to the season. And I got to be honest, if you lead your league in wins, lead your league in run differential, and win the pennant, you did a lot of stuff right. It's really hard for me not to call that a success.
Joe, I know you have a ton to say. Would you mind if I went first?
Please, by all means.
Will, I love this because everything you just said is so well thought through and so like empirically correct. And yet I still find things I disagree with about it.
That is the life of me.
Yeah, I love that because it's I'm not looking at you like you're crazy. I'm telling you, you're absolutely right. I'm just going to tell you one thing about this, right? So on the first point about equating 90 with 03, you're absolutely right. And yet in 40 years, it'll be the exact same thing. It will be. It will be. Unless we don't win any other time around this, and we'll have to look at this year. If there's another 10 years and we don't win, then we'll have to look at that year as just to mark the time of, oh, that was the year we made it that one time. The second thing I'll say is this. I genuinely understand where you're coming from when you're talking all about, I mean, it's not as simple as saying, oh, well, you're the Yankees, just make the team good. Things are very competitive. You know, there's a whole mix or tier of teams that are kind of what everyone assumed we were kind of doing alone back in the 90s and 2000s. Right?
I mean, they're going to face a guy in game 2 who in 2005 would probably be on the Yankees.
How many guys are on the Dodgers right now that the Yankees were like, they planted their flags and they want, right. So, but ultimately all of those things can be correct. And I can still tell you that right now we are standing on the doorstep of closing this thing out and hanging another banner. So it's not the beginning of the season. There's no hypothetical. We're not talking about, you know, the start of the season, looking forward and saying, what if I told you we could make it to the World Series? Is that a failure? And we're staying there in April. We're talking about this team right now being primed to get it done. And we've yet to see it play out. And if we go to 7 games and we get walked off by a Shohei Ohtani, you can look at it a little differently than what I'm assuming. If it really is like down to the wire like that. But if we get dog walked in 5 games and we were in here and we felt like, you know, and it's going to be the aftermath from a conversation perspective will be all about what do we need to add now on top of bringing Soto back. It'll be despondent and despair. Momentum will kind of be lost because the benchmark will be here and we'll have nothing to show for it, unlike Emmanuel Clase, who's got plenty of rings. Joey, I went on longer than I thought I would. But
no, please, that's completely fine. And I appreciate you going first because it gives me time to truncate some of my thoughts.
So.
Listen, logically, you're right. There's no arguing there. And I will say that it's not, there's a lot of gray area and you can say failure on a spectrum. Like you said, 1990, obviously on the lower end of, or the higher end of that failure spectrum, 2003 on the lower end of that spectrum. This is an emotional argument. I have a prop. I bought this hat as soon as...
Dude, I got the same one. This is not like...
As soon as they won. I was with the boys in the city. They won. We went right to the MLB store. It was great. If we get dog walked, like Conor said, I'm going to look at this hat and this patch and be sick to my stomach. Yeah, no, this is... Actually, my door's closed. I hang all my hats over there and on my front door.
What are you going to put back in your head, Joey? You're going to put an 03 hat, or is it going to be an 01 hat?
Yeah, no. This is going to be...
It's going to be a 96, 98, 99.
I will look at it and go, that was cool, I guess. We got the shits We got the stuff slapped out of us. Excuse me. I tried really hard to keep that rule.
You're okay.
We got slapped around. It's just when you win, nothing else matters. Winning fixes everything. And Conor made a great point. We're not sweating it in Houston like, oh my God, it's the first 4 innings of opening day, and it's, oh my God, how is this team going to do anything right? We're already down 4-0. We're here, and to quote a controversial manager, it's right in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was right in front of us the whole time.
Think of the 15 years of heartbreak we've had to deal with. And I know a lot of people, like we mentioned, they're like, oh, poor you, poor you. Listen, it's not the baseball that kills you. It's the hope. I'm so serious. It's the hope that kills you.
It is.
And that's why
we are 70 years away from being the Red Sox when I was 14 until
True.
70 years is a long time, but 15 years feels a lot like 70 when I saw 5 titles growing up.
Did you guys notice how it's never the first 18 years of a century that the Red Sox have trouble with?
Yeah,
I just find that interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, hey, listen, if they want to go back to ye old curse, that's totally cool with me. No complaints over here. But
I just really appreciate Ian Kinsler for leaving the curse on them as he left.
We're talking about the varsity team right now. The JV stuff is for JV time.
I agree with you.
Listen, if we get walked off by Shohei in Game 7, it's going to hurt. If we get dog walked, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt either way. The only way through, or the only way out is through. So they got to win this. If they win this, the trajectory of a lot of things changes. Legacies are changed. And listen, that Altuve home run, getting swept in 22, the Game 7 and 17, it doesn't go away. But as I mentioned, it's some aloe to those burns that have been placed on us.
And what are we if we don't win every once in a while? Like, what are we? What's our identity? We're not the lovable Mets. We can't continue to sustain, honestly, viability as an enterprise without championships. We don't have that built into our, right? So when you look back in those lean years, whether it's the early 70s or the early 90s, 80s, yeah, the stadium was empty. And you go now, and they're playing the Oakland Athletics in the middle of August, and the stadium's pretty darn full.
But look, people want to see Lawrence Butler. Let's not. Yeah. Come on.
He's a freak. I do like him a lot.
Sure. But what they don't want to see is a team that's resigned to their fate of being a playoff contender. And I mean, I'm happy with it. It's great, and it's great for business. But ultimately, fans will give up, and we can't sustain success unless we give them something. I'm Yankees. I'm thinking that as ownership. I'm not, So I don't know. It's tough.
I hear you. I totally do. I think that given that we all understand that there's nothing you can do to guarantee yourself a championship. I mean, even cheating, the Astros lost the next 2 years after 17.
Well, because the Red Sox cheated in 18. But...
Well, the Red Sox cheated too, but then they lost to the Nationals. Like, come on. Even cheating doesn't necessarily do it for you. It just feels to me so, I don't know, short-sighted, maybe spoiled,
glib.
But I don't want to apply spoiled to you guys. It just feels like there are things worth appreciating from a season where you win the pennant, regardless of how the World Series goes. Now, here's hoping that we don't have to address that, and it's a success because they won the World Series. And I think that
right now, we've been talking about losing for the last 20 minutes, guys. Let's go.
So look, this is how we're changing gears. We're getting to predictions. Yeah. Whipple has the Yankees in 7 and Garrett Cole winning the World Series MVP. Conor, you DM'd me your Reggie Jackson tweet, which I just want to read to the followers because this is awesome. This is awesome.
Okay.
44 hours at the time until the first pitch of the 2024 World Series between the Yankees and Dodgers. In the 1977 World Series, played between the same two clubs, Reggie Jackson hit 5 home runs in the final 3 games, including 3 homers in a championship-clinching Game 6. Reggie was named World Series MVP, becoming the first player to hit 5 home runs in a single World Series, earning the title Mr. October. Giancarlo Stanton finished the 2024 ALCS with 4 home runs in just 5 games versus Cleveland. His career stats at Dodger Stadium: 309 average, 9 doubles, 10 homers, 26 runs batted in, a 723 slugging percentage, and a 1086 OPS. Makes you think.
Pretty good.
Yeah. Thank you for
So
reading
Conor,
that story. It was really
soothing.
I'm glad you enjoyed it because it was supposed to sound a little bit unhinged, but also like, I don't know, feels like it's shaping up.
So make your call.
Make the call. Okay, so Giancarlo is obviously going to be my prediction for World Series MVP.
Yep.
It doesn't feel like a hot take right now, even though it's been a hot take for pretty much the last 5 years for me. I've been shouting it from the rooftops that he's at worst underappreciated, at most the most, I would say, disregarded and underrated icon in New York sports history. The guy looks bad when he's bad. He looks like he should be a superhuman, like he's come down from space to teach us about like new cultures and new ways of living that we never knew about before, right? His eyes should be gleaming and he should be hitting a home run every at bat. And I think his reputation suffers for that because he's also next to a guy who looks a lot like him, who goes out there and has a more toolsy, more marketable, more vocal version of what he's been for even longer. And his humility to deal with that. The idea that you go back to A-Rod and Jeter with the inferiority complex that A-Rod suffered from, just from kind of, they're both infielders. They're both good-looking guys in their 20s in New York City, superstars. And Jeter just probably never really affected him. And that's what I think of, and it clearly affected A-Rod, good friend of mine, by the way. But if he was here last night drinking wine, he would admit to that, I think, at this stage. Humility found him late. Giancarlo Stanton, I don't think it's ever been a question. And when you look at this, the talent, and when he puts it together, the thing that sets him apart is that when you make a mistake, unlike a lot of guys, like, and fairly so, hitting a baseball is hard, he doesn't miss. We're talking about centimeters on the barrel. When he's locked in, he's connecting and he's on time, the guy is he's mythological. And the idea that because he's streaky or injury prone, and the only time he really finds it is in October, that New York fans would somehow be under, it blows my mind. And I've had enough, but lucky for me, this hill I was originally going to die on, everyone's joined me and it feels a little bit crowded. So that's my prediction, and it's surprising nobody. So there it is.
Yankees in.
Oh, I don't care. It's Giancarlo MVP, even in a loss. No, I'm kidding. Okay, Yankees in 5.
Bobby Richardson style.
Yankees in 5.
Wow.
I'll stop there. You can ask me later why or right now why, but I've talked a lot. So Yankees in 5.
Joseph?
I've been a wreck. I have been a train wreck. Will, you and I talked about it yesterday. I was frantic. I was saying they were going to rig this for the Dodgers. This is a Shohei coronation. This is Shohei over Judge. This is every, quite frankly, disgusting nightmare we've had since this matchup has been announced. I've been on edge. I'm going to ramble a little bit, and I'm sorry. I'm thinking there's no chance they don't give it to the Dodgers. I talked to my high school best friend. I told him the same stuff, and to give it a television PG rating, he told me to get my head out of my butt and stop reading doomers on Twitter.
Yeah, Joey's kind of breaking up a little bit. I didn't hear any of that. And
are you serious?
No, I heard you, big guy.
Oh, Jesus. Siri is serious, too.
Yeah.
I thought they'd rig it for the Dodgers. My buddy made a great point. He said they didn't rig it for the Yankees in 2001. They're sure as hell not rigging it for the Dodgers in 24.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, Yanks in 6. Anthony Volpe is your World Series MVP.
Jersey represents.
I'm saying big home run in Game 5. I'm getting Mr. November.
We saw another home run at Dodger Stadium, Joey. We were there. We were sitting side by side and watched that happen.
We were there, and I'll tell you my big X factor, and then I'll shut up for a while. When Aaron Judge plays Shohei Ohtani, he takes it personally. I feel every time we've seen those two match up, Ohtani withers and Judge balls out.
Say more about that.
This is the biggest stage. I think we get some legacy rewriting here. And I think Judge takes care of business too. But Volpe's my World Series MVP. Yanks in 6. Lock it.
Do you think Ohtani has a home run in Yankee Stadium at any point during the series?
Oh, he's going to hit a nuke. I watched him take Clark to Hoboken 2 years ago. Like,
Ohtani on Clark Schmidt.
Or down by 7 when that happens? Will they be up by 7 or down by 7?
It was actually a tie game. It was the first inning.
No, I'm asking you for this series. Well,
yeah, it might be a first ball hits a big 3 to cut the lead to 40 kind of home run, but give him something.
And they'll be the broadcaster, whoever it's going to be. I'm not sure.
It's
yet.
Joe Davis.
Joe Davis will be louder for that garbage time home run than he will be for the Volpe go ahead. I'm telling you right now. It could mean nothing. The stadium could be deafeningly quiet or just ambivalent, and they're going to go nuts because it's a cha-ching for everyone involved. And no knock against that, but I agree. I think Ohtani gets one at the stadium. It's going to be funny because it's not going to be a close game. It won't be high leverage at all. No chance.
The last time the Yankees were in the World Series, my friend Dominic, who I had Spanish class with, was a Phillies fan. And before the series started, he said, "What do you think's going to happen?" I said, "Yanks in 6. I think I just got to go back to it." I know that the Zips playoff odds tell me that Yanks in 7 is the most likely way for them to win, followed by Yanks in 5. Give me Yanks in 6. I don't have a great reason for it. As I said, I think pretty much the series is a coin flip. Every game of the series is basically a coin flip. I just have enough faith that the coin's going to come up Aaron Judge enough times. Stanton would have been my World Series MVP pick. I think, the LA angle is an exciting one. I think the playoff Stanton angle is an exciting one. I obviously love Glaber. I think that however his offseason goes, this has been a really great culmination to this period of his Yankee tenure, at least. But I don't know how you can have watched these playoffs and go anywhere but Juan Soto. You want to talk about things I could see MLB rigging? The Juan Soto World Series MVP brings a championship to New York after 15 years and is now the most sought after free agent of all time. Yeah, I think they would be okay with that storyline. So if we're thinking about things they might rig, I'll jump on Juan Soto World Series MVP.
I think that's the best choice. And I think Yankees in 6 is the most likely outcome. I think probabilistically you have made the correct wager. I can't speak for Joey, but I think he's like me in the fact that you have to, it's better to be wrong and interesting than right and boring. Juan Soto would be the boring choice, but that's why he's so freaking good, is because the guy, it's not, you can already see it happening.
Yep.
Even the World Series patch, even with him only having one season under his belt with the Yankees, it's like it's already happened. It would be like a deja vu moment that has never happened before. I mean,
and I can't emphasize enough how badly I want the World Series MVP to be Aaron Judge, because I think there's a community of people who malign Aaron Judge about as unfairly as any baseball player. And it's insane. And they know who they are. Yankees fans, I'm talking about. So I would really love it to be Judge, but Soto just feels inevitable to me. And I agree. Like I would love to pick Glaber and have it be interesting, or, Volpe or Austin Wells or whomever, but I can't go any other direction. Look, guys, I solicited some follower questions, but we've already gone on for an hour and a half, so we're not answering those because I got to get this podcast edited and posted. Conor, you may not know this. Joey, you do. We end every Yankees Files podcast by rating our confidence in the New York Yankees on a scale from 1 to 10. And what that means is entirely up to the interpretation of the person who is giving the rating. So, Conor, your first ever 1 to 10 Yankees Files confidence rating comes on the World Series preview episode when you've just picked the Yankees to win the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
Name your number.
I'm going with 85 and room to run. It would be foolish to start with a 90 or 100. You got to give these guys a little bit of time to bake into the series. Ease into the series. I'm feeling 85 right now, and like you said, completely out of nowhere. I have no reference point. It's like Dave Portnoy with the pizza ratings.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, dude, you don't just give out a 7-8. That's really nilly. But there's an 8-5 for the Yankees.
Joseph?
Squilliam, are we doing this out of 100 or out of 10?
Normally it's out of 10, but
We'll do
that's
it
an
out of
easy
100.
fraction.
Stay out of 100? Man, I had a long day, boys. We're going to go to 8.5 on that one. Appreciate you. Thanks, Joey, for just asking it instead of just telling me.
Well, I wanted to clarify, because if you were sitting here saying 85 and I'm like, yeah, give me a 10, that would look a little ridiculous.
85.
Look, greatness comes from making bold decisions. Give me a 10. Bring it home. I need it. We need it. The fans need it. The city needs it. Rock out. 10, 100, whatever. I need 28. Let's go.
I'm at a 10. I can't go any other direction. This team has delivered on everything I wanted this team to deliver on. They are rolling. They've been the best team in the postseason. I've waited long enough. And as I said, it's a coin flip and who knows what might happen. But to the extent that they can weight that coin, I have confidence that they will.
There's the fan will. There's the non-analytical. Let's win one will right there.
Let's do it. Let's do it. It's a rare appearance. But look, when we're 24 hours away from the World Series, that's what you get out of me. All right. Last thing, I'm going to ask you guys for just any parting shots that you have. So, Joey, I'll go to you first. Whatever you want to talk about, whatever you want to plug, whatever you want to say, whatever you don't want to leave unsaid before this World Series begins, go ahead.
The Battle of New York podcast will be back. Who will be on it is anyone's guess, but we will be back. Will, I'm so happy that I was able to come on and do a quick spot start like Cody Poteet again. Whipple, feel better, Booby. We miss you. And I just want to thank you for having me on again. This is always a great time.
Thanks so much for being here, dude. Really appreciate it.
Always.
Conor, parting shots. Anything you want to say, plug, reference, ask? The world is your oyster.
Hey, it's been really fun being on this. It's been great getting to know you guys and getting to know everyone that I've met or talked to and interacted with on Yankees Twitter in general. And I'm really excited to be in the stadium I'm lucky enough to be going to 2 of these games. So if anyone out there is going to game 4 or 5, hit me up in the DMs on the old tweet machine and I won't be shy, I promise. You might have to come to me. But I'm down to grab a beer with anyone, or even a hard seltzer, or even an apple juice. It's been awesome meeting more and more people from this awesome community, and there's no better time to do it than right now. We got to share in this together, and we're nothing by ourselves. We are one group here, and remember to be nice to each other, even if the other person is dead wrong. It's not about
We're
that.
pre-gaming game 4, right?
Love each other. Yeah, Joey, we're going to be loving each other before game 4 with a few beers.
We will be pre-gaming game 4 together. It's lit.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, anyway, Will, appreciate you having me on. And Joey, as always, good to see you.
Always a pleasure.
Conor, thanks so much for being here. This was born out of just, we met at the ALCS and here you are on the podcast. So really appreciate that. Your willingness to join us, your flexibility. It was a blast. I hope this is the first of many. Joey, as always, very much appreciate, the Chad Godin, the Cody Poteet, whoever you want to paint yourself as. And look, that wraps things up. You got 3 guys who know ball, all predicting the Yankees winning the World Series. So you know who to blame if they don't, and you know who to thank if they do. That wraps things up for this World Series preview episode, this pennant winning episode of the Yankees Files podcast. People can keep up with everything we do at yankeesfiles.com. They can find us on Twitter where we're at Yankees Files. You can find the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You get the added bonus or detriment, not still sure which, of video if you're a Spotify listener. Whole video podcast also goes up on YouTube, the Crosstown Sports YouTube channel, where you can find the Battle in New York whenever it comes back. And look, Whipple, we really hope you feel better. We hope that the Yankees bring you some good health and some good baseball. And Whipple and I will be back whenever this series wraps up, hopefully to recap a championship winning season. Until then, let's go Yankees.
Let's go Yanks.